I'm really glad I had 2 companies under my belt before I took my first venture capital with Apex back in 1999. I sold out my portion in 2001. Now this company, and also goes to the percentage question, Stan Advanced Ceramics is a venture capital-based backed company. And our first Jumpstart investment, there were 7,500 business plans, and there were 32 investments. You know, with North Coast Angel Fund, I think it's 1,700 business plans, and there were 9 investments at the time when I got mine. But unless you, so I think from an educational standpoint, you open the idea to both. Because I don't think it's one way or the other. I know entrepreneurs now that have started and never touched a VC dollar, nor will they ever. And they're engineering based. I know 2 right here in town. But at the same time, I know, like myself and others who have gone into the venture capital field, you have to learn that lingo, and you have to understand that culture, and you got a real good education at Blue Chip. And I did because I was an early Jumpstart recipient, which is the local, I call it the schizophrenic VC. They're 50%, nonprofit org, 50% cold-blooded VC. So they're an interesting mix.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, Kurt, you seem to have an affinity for somebody that would push the chips in, go all in. If you were evaluating a project and it had been incubated in kind of a safe environment of a university, would you be suspicious of it?
Yeah. Universities so far have demonstrated a over-expectation of the ownership of their own intellectual property if they target that property to go out to the business climate. In the last 10 years, I think that's changed tremendously. But before then, they had, we're going to own 85% and we're going to require you to hire this professor as a consultant at $120,000 a year. And, so strings. Anytime that you deal with an outside entity that's trying to show you something and bring your street smarts and your salesmanship and your real-world experience into their academic incubated great idea, the one part, do your due diligence, take it and throw it on the wall in every way you know how, every way you've been taught, and understand that still could be a great partnership. Just like
what's interesting about your answer was it wasn't about the content. It wasn't about how good the technology was.
No.
And that's what I saw from venture capital. I saw great technology and actually even great teams, but if they're not lucky in terms of market timing and a bunch of other things happening, that technology it may go untapped totally. And there's probably a lot of technology here that's untapped because typically the harder part is getting it to market and all the human-related issues. It's not necessarily the engineering challenge.
And marketing is like surfing. You got to catch the wave at the right time, and every once in a while you're going to get that 20-foot, 5-foot wave, and when you do, you have to be ready, because luck really is just preparation meeting opportunity. Because luck would be the day that you go out, you get a 25-foot wave. Preparation is that your board's waxed, you've practiced, and you've got your swim trunks on.
Any more questions out there? I had one. Tim, you mentioned this idea. I remember when you were an undergraduate, and computers and music was just sort of starting to evolve, and certainly there was interest from the engineering side, on the signal processing side, and from the music side in terms of making music presentation better. I'm wondering if both you and Carl can reflect a little bit on engineering curriculum, sort of as you participated in it, and what do you see might be necessary as engineering curriculum are moving forward in this new area or a new era where innovations and entrepreneurship now are becoming much more of a focus and more highlighted, where in the past it just sort of happened spontaneously maybe by the people and because of their personalities and experience they had. And can you give any insight into how you think curriculum might evolve or might change?
I mentioned a few of those things on the slides, but the word that's coming to mind for me is just engagement. I mean, because there are some people that will want to continue to take their pursuit, kind of the academic and research pursuit, which is fine. Others might take the entrepreneurial route. But either way, both of those people are engaged in in what it is they're learning. So they're not just sitting back. I think that's a challenge when you have the large classrooms, when you have material that's maybe presented in a way that either doesn't allow for application. So I remember some of my systems classes where we talked about a real-world application. And I remember when the professor said, okay, now we're going to take an airplane and we're going to design a system that stabilizes the airplane. And I was, those equations can do that? It's like, wow. So putting it in context, for me anyway, was really helpful.
Day one engagement. When I served on the Case Alumni Association Futures Committee, what we realized was that they were being first approached as a donor 5 years after they left Case, when really what you should do is engage someone day one and say, look, you're the future potential donor of the Case Alumni Association. That same way, that day one, the day they walk in the door, you're a potential entrepreneur, here's what we can do for you at Case, and here's the history of our alumni and the successes and failures that they've had as entrepreneurs and what they've learned from those. So day one engagement. But also, I was talking yesterday to Bruce Terry and then Gary Winnick at dinner. It seemed like Case to me had a fire caused by lightning policy on entrepreneurs. In other words, sometimes lightning would strike, and when it did, sometimes a fire would happen, and then that fire would be represented by an entrepreneur being created here at Case. Whereas some of the other institutions I've dealt with, MIT in particular, they've actually added the concept of structure to entrepreneurship. It's not some holy event that just happens spontaneously. In other words, we can control fire and we can make it happen when we want to. So I would suggest that you add, which Gary is now, and I understand Tim is contributing greatly to this concept that structure and entrepreneurship are not oil and water. They are concepts that can work together. And we don't have to anymore rely on our entrepreneurs coming from lightning that causes fire.
Thanks. Anything else? Oh, yes.
Ted mentioned that the VC process is not efficient. And I wonder if the teaching of entrepreneurship and the nurturing of that, moving towards a more structured model, why not apply that to the process of VC and actually commercializing ideas? Or is that contradictory to the creativity and just the process itself?
I think people in the industry try. It's been elusive in terms of the venture industry. If you look at the couple of thousand, there's over 2,000 venture firms, and with the recession and other economic environments, that's supposed to be whittled down. Of those thousands of firms, there's still only a handful of firms that actually are successful over the long term at understanding the patterns and understanding what's going to be successful and not successful. So everybody's in search of that. It's very hard to predict because you have all these different factors of science and human and market forces that all have to come together and then hope that lightning does hit as well.
Multivariables.